Oh. Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambham Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurudeva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Hari Om and good evening from Niagara Falls. Valmiki Ji shares in his Ramayana that Bhagwan Rama, Mother Sita and Sri Lakshmana lived in Chitrakuta for almost 10 years. And the more years that they lived there, the more people came to know that they were there. And so Bhagwan Rama felt the need to leave Chitrakuta because he wasn't supposed to be in a kingdom where there's a lot of people. So he's going to leave Chitrakuta and go to Dandaka Aranya. But before he does, he goes to meet Atri Rishi. And from Atri Rishi, he goes to meet Agastya Rishi. But in between, he meets Sharabhanga Rishi. Sharabhanga Rishi was a great sadhaka. He is someone who engaged in a lot of sadhana, and so much so that there was a vimana, there was an aerial car that was coming to bring him from earth to Brahmaloka. Through the wind, he heard that Bhagwan Rama was near him, was moving between Chitrakuta and Dandakaranya. So he told that aerial car to go away. And he went looking for Bhagwan Rama. And he did find Bhagwan Rama. And upon seeing Bhagwan Rama, he had Atma Darshana. Through Ishvara Darshana, there is Atma Darshana. And he was enlightened. He was free. He was about to go to Brahmaloka, where he would have received Krama Mukti. It would have taken a long time for him to be free. But through Bhagwan's Kripa, he was able to understand that there is a means and there is an end. And Krama Mukti is a means, a slow means. And Bhagwan's Kripa is the ends, because Bhagwan's Kripa means there is Bhagwan. I had shared with you a couple of weeks ago that one of Bhagwan Rama's names is Patigata, the one who moves freely, the one who goes to where bhaktas are. And you see how Sharabhanga was on his way to Brahmaloka, but Bhagwan reached him. And I hope we can all feel that whatever cities we're living in, whatever conditions of our mind we're living in, that Bhagwan is Patigata in the sense that Srimad Bhagavad Gita is being brought to our computers, is being brought to our ears. It is through Bhagwan's Kripa that we don't get stuck on the means to enlightenment and we actually reach enlightenment. We are studying the Tat portion of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. The first 6 chapters focuses on Tvam. The focus is on Prince Arjuna. The next 6 chapters is on Tat, is on Bhagavan Krishna. And the end of this section, in chapter 12, Bhagavan Krishna, in a series of shlokas says, such a person is priya to me. Such a seeker is priya to me. Such a devotee is priya to me, is close to me. And he ends this series of shlokas by saying such a visionary is ativa priya, is the nearest to me, the closest to me. And if you think of this carefully, this begins the shift from focusing on Tat to focusing on Asi. That Prince Arjuna and Bhagavan Krishna are one. That closeness, that nearness is actually indicative of oneness. To reach this oneness, we have to give our full focus to Tat. Who is Bhagavan Krishna? In chapter 7, Bhagavan Krishna is sharing with all of us that we have to know all is divine. All that's happening outside of our mind, all that's happening inside of our mind, all is divine. And there's a lot of intellectual development from jnana to vijnana. In chapter 8, which we just completed, it's not just to know all is divine, but to remember all is divine. Not to just remember at death, not to just remember in change, but to remember in every experience, in every moment. I know all of you are looking at and admiring my tan right now, aren't you? You can't focus in class because of the golden complexion that I have. While we were in Trinidad for our yatra, after each experience, whether it was hiking in a waterfalls or seeing a tarantula or being in satsang, all of the yatris, we would focus on what did we learn from that experience? What revelations did we come with? It's not just knowing all is divine, but remembering all is divine. Now we go to chapter 9 and we have to go deeper. From knowing, from remembering, to feeling all is divine. If we are tuning into Tat, this chapter is encouraging us to feel that divinity in every moment, in every experience. Focusing on 9.1 to 9.4. This chapter is called Raja Vidya. Raja means the king, the best. Vidya means knowledge or science. Now why? Why is this called Raja Vidya? Why isn't economics called Raja Vidya? Why isn't electrical engineering known as Raja Vidya? Logically, if you think of other sciences, other knowledges, they're known by what? They're known through thoughts. I have thoughts of the periodic table, so I come to know that science. So a knowledge is known by thoughts. If there's no thoughts towards that knowledge, then I don't know that knowledge. Yes? I don't have any thoughts towards cooking. So I have no knowledge of cooking. But how are thoughts known? Thoughts are known by chit, or awareness. And that's what Srimad Bhagavad Gita, that's what Vedanta is focusing on, is chit, awareness. So logically, knowledge depends on thoughts, and thoughts depend on awareness. So this is the most independent, the most fundamental knowledge known. And if we move away from logic and go to feeling, what is the purpose of life? What is the only need that we have? It is peace, no? The purpose, the need is peace. Which knowledge brings us this purpose, this need? Did you achieve this purpose at work today? Did you feel this need interacting with your family today? Possibly, and I hope so. And if that was the case, it was built on this knowledge that my work is my worship, that my family is my murti. This chapter, this knowledge is also called Raja Guhyam. Raja Guhyam means a royal secret. Now let's take this logically first. Why is this a secret? Because it's not available through pratyaksha. The body and senses cannot experience infinity, cannot experience independent joy. My hand doesn't even know if it's holding a pen or a pencil. So leave alone knowing what my true nature is. It's not open to pratyaksha, to experience. Logically, this is also not open or available to anumana, or inference. This is more a mental and intellectual realm. I can't think of infinity because that mind and intellect is finite. It cannot measure that which is infinite. It cannot hold that which is infinite. Which is why the Shruti, Shabda, is most important. Because it is only through this, though finite, closer to infinity means that we can know who we are. We can know our nature. Sharing another reference point, Rishi Patanjali says that if you want to know anything well, if you want to know anything at a pramana level, at an authoritative level, you have to look at this subject from three perspectives. He says, anubhuti, or experience. He says, anumana, or inference. And the third, he says, is agama, which is the scriptures. Our whole lives we're living by the senses and the body. Fine. Anubhuti is there. We're also living at the mind and intellect level, so anumana is there. Here we're being introduced to the Shastra, which is agama, that third perspective which brings clarity, conviction, confidence. Raja Guhyam, at a less logical and suppose a more emotional level, we keep Vedanta a secret from ourselves, isn't it? Think about how much time you invested into the world today. Cleaning your home, grooming yourself, thinking about tomorrow. How much time did you invest into Antaha Veda, that inner self, knowing who you are? We keep this a secret from ourselves. We want this, yet if we don't have this, it's okay. We're still young. We still are powerful. This will come in time. I think that if we didn't keep this so much of a secret to ourselves, the Brahmanas of the past who took this term, Raja Guhyam, and capitalized on this by saying that we know the secret and you don't, and started creating further and further divisions between the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, the Shudras. If we didn't keep this such a secret from ourselves, could anyone hold that against us, that this is not open to you? We empowered the Brahmanas, no? But now we're not the corrupt Brahmanas. We are studying this royal secret because this is available to everyone. This is the most intimate knowledge. This is about not the body, mind, intellect, ego. This is about I. This is the most integrative knowledge. Because to reach Brahma, you have to go through dharma. I have to become more and more and more virtuous. In chapter 12, when we reach this statement of such a visionary is most dear to me, there's so many virtues that are required for us to realize we are one with Bhagavan. Most intimate, most integrative, most infinite. Once you know who you are, once you know existence, awareness, joy, it is impossible to forget that. There is only nandati, nandati, nandati. There's only rejoicing, eva, and nothing else. So what is this knowledge that Bhagavan is bringing so much fascination to? What is this? Chapter 9 is actually a deepening of chapter 7. It's taking the subject matter of 7, the direction, and going deeper. The message of chapter 9 is, I am not in them, they are in me. I'll say that slowly again. I am not in them. I here is referring to Bhagavan. Them is referring to articles, beings, circumstances. I am not in them. They, articles, beings, circumstances, are in me. This is what chapter 9 is taking up for us and elaborating on this. When you take articles, beings, and circumstances, our outer world, I am not in them, change the word to dependent. I am not dependent on them. They are dependent on me. I here is referring to existence. Existence doesn't depend on articles, beings, and circumstances, but articles, beings, and circumstances do depend on existence. So that's our outer world. Let's make this more close to our inner world. Change it to awareness. Awareness does not depend on thoughts, but thoughts do depend on awareness. If I'm aware whether there's thoughts there or not, doesn't matter. But if there's thoughts and I know them, it's because of that awareness. So existence is independent in the outer world, awareness is independent in the inner world. Bhagavan is saying, feel this divinity. Don't just treat Satchidananda as Bhagavan, feel this as yourself. Now in chapter 7 we had introduced creation, so now we have to bring that up too. If there is a cause for articles, beings, circumstances, if there's a cause for the inner world, mind, memory, intellect, ego, if there's a cause, that cause is Bhagavan. How many times did I say if? 5, 6, 7 times. You know why? Because in this chapter, Bhagavan also says, I am not in them, and then he says, they are not in me. He says, I am not in them, they are not in me, indicating that there is no cause. There is no creation. I'm going to repeat that. Earlier I had shared, I am not in them, they are in me, correct? I am not in them, they are in me. They indicates that there is a cause, there is creation, correct? But then how come later in the chapter he says, they are not in me? Because he's actually invalidating the idea that there is any cause, that there is any creation. If there's no creation, then what is existence, awareness, joy doing? Just being. This is our nature. Just be. Be existence, be awareness, be joy. Subtle. Extremely subtle. And all of us may not appreciate this, and that's fine. This exposure is very worthwhile. Otherwise, all we're exposed to is very relative sciences or very relative Vedanta. And we reach that, and then we feel like our journey is complete. It's important to be exposed to these deepest truths. Bhagavan concedes to the idea that if there is a cause, if there's creation, then that's me. But in all of this, I am not the doer. I am not the doer. And here again, he's indicating reality. That reality is not moving or changing or exerting. Reality is being. Bhagavan is also indicating how we should live our lives without doership. However great our body is, however great our family is, however great our seva, our professions are, without doership. That movement, that change, that effort, why is it there? If anyone is the reason for this is Bhagavan, not the jiva. And even Bhagavan saying, I'm not the doer. There's no room for the ego. Raja Vidya, every other science we study, there's space for the ego. Raja Guhyam, in the heart cave, there is no ego. Guha is another word for cave, like Guhyam. Subtle, requires a lot of thinking. So think. What else is there to do but think? I'm shifting to 9.5 to 9.9. I know I'm taking up a whole section. We have to finish chapter 9 before 2018 begins. If I don't know all is divine, if I don't remember all is divine, if I don't feel all is divine, then what kind of person am I? How do I live? And here Bhagavan introduces the word mogha. What does mogha mean? False, confused. The word that I like to think of mogha as is vain. Mogha means vain, vanity. If I'm this type of person where there is no knowing, remembering, or feeling of divinity, mogha asha. I have vain thoughts. And what does this look like? I expect to be completed by that which is incomplete. Articles, beings, circumstances are incomplete, but I expect that they should complete me. What Swami Tejomayananda writes is, expecting sugar to be salty. If anyone expected that, that's really false or confused or vain thinking, no? Isn't that what we do too? The more I get promoted, the more I'm going to be peaceful. Is that strategy working out for everyone? The more kids I have, the more peaceful I will be. Is that strategy also working? That's mogha asha. And if I think in this vain way, then naturally there's going to be mogha karma. If I think in a vain way, I'm going to act in a vain way. So tell me, what does it look like? What happens when I act in a vain way? I become more worried and I become more afraid. We studied karma in chapter 2, 3, 4, 5. Karma is supposed to free us. But that's karma yoga. Mogha karma just makes us more worried, more afraid. Should we have an honesty test here? Okay. If you can rewind to the beginning of the year, January 1, 2017, now we're approaching the end of this year. How many of you have become a more worried personality over the last 330 days? You've become more worried, not less worried. Anyone? I see some hands. Here's where you're supposed to be honest, okay? Okay. Why? Why have you become more worried? And if you're saying that about yourself, maybe more reality needs to be brought into our karma. And me saying maybe is just me being polite and saying definitely more reality needs to be brought into our karma. If I think in a vain way, I'm going to act in a vain way. What's the next mogha that comes? Mogha jnana. I start to have the notion that I know when actually that's just vain knowledge. It's just information. And what that looks like, that I become more of a person who proclaims doership, more of a person who proclaims deservership. How did this camp happen? Because of this guy. Who should be mentioned first in a wedding speech? This guy. All right? More doership, more deservership. And why is it like that? Because I'm acting, but I'm acting thoughtlessly. The person who lives by expectations is a person who lives by actions, is a person who lives by notions, and all of it is wrong. The word that's describing this is vichetas, which really means to be lost. I'm a lost person if I have expectations and actions and notions that are based on the ego and not based on humility. And Bhagavan Krishna so thoughtfully brings even more clarity to this. He separates asuras and rakshasas. You know, when we study our shastras, we categorize both together. Nisachara, bhuta, pisacha, asura, rakshasa, all of these words that describe demons, goblins, etc. Bhagavan very systematically separates them. An asura is someone who's indulgent. A rakshasa is someone who's immoral. Now, if you think about going to eat at a buffet, if you eat so much where you're in pain, that's being an asura. But if you go to this buffet and you consciously keep sneezing on all of the food, that means you're a rakshasa. Okay? In one, you're just harming yourself, and others, you're harming others too, correct? Putting this differently. An asura is someone who lives for pleasure, position for themselves. They're selfish. Asura. A rakshasa is someone who tries to get pleasure, position to use against others. Like modern day slavery. You know modern day slavery still exists, correct? I believe a recent report, Swami Prakashananda and I were talking about this. There's still 43 million slaves in the world. Can you believe that? 43 million. That's 1.5. That's the entire country of Canada and some states. Everyone is still under slavery. Modern day slavery is prostitution. No? My point being there is that someone would use their position to enslave another person. Rakshasa. Rakshasas exist, no? They're not just stories. An asura is someone who has rajas as their dominant rope, guna. A rakshasa is someone who has tamas as their dominant rope, guna. And by studying rakshasas and asuras so carefully, Bhagavan is really saying, be a deva, be a devi. And you'll find that this becomes the seed for chapter 16. And when we get to chapter 16, I'll mention that I talked about this in chapter 9, and you'll all be like, yes, yes. A deva is not someone who is immoral or indulgent. A deva is someone who is introvert. So ask yourself, are you immoral, indulgent, or are you introvert? A deva is not someone who uses the lower P's to harm others, is not using the lower P's for selfishness, but a deva is someone who's not even interested in the lower P's. They're only interested in peace. And how did they get there? Sattva. In our Atma Bodha course, I asked everyone, what are you doing to be more sattvic? So ask yourself, what are you doing to get out of tamas into rajas, out of rajas into sattva? And Bhagavan again, he's the sutrakar and the bhashyakar. He introduces the principle and then gives examples. He introduces the teaching and then elaborates. Here is how one can become more sattvic. By different types of bhakti. The word used is ruchi. Ruchi means flavors. Flavors of bhakti. One can engage in kirtana. Kirtana means to live the glories of Bhagavan. It doesn't just mean singing the glories. Deeper than that is to live the glories. As an example, when you think of Hanumanji, you can chant Hanuman Chalisa, or if you know Hanumanji is the hardest working person that you read about, if you start being the hardest working person, that's Kirtana. No? It can be done through Namaskara. Namaskara is to see the glory of the divine. If I see the glory of the divine in the sunset, I prostrate to that sunset. If I see the glory of the divine in how water flows into my tap, then I don't waste that water. You live the glory, you see the glory, and Bhagavan also says yajna, jnana yajna, which is to know the glory of the divine. If I know that Sri Lakshmana is the most focused person in Ramayana, by knowing that, it helps me to invoke the same. I actually think the reverse order is more practical. You start with the Yajna Bhakti, where you know the glories of Bhagavan. Then after that, Namaskara Bhakti, where you start to see the glories. And finally is Kirtana, where you start to live those glories, you know? First you know, then you see, then you live. So Bhagavan is saying, how do you become more sattvic? You evolve by these forms of bhakti. And he gives another framework too. You evolve by forms of bhava. Bhava is feeling. One person feels Bhagavan as ekatvena, that Bhagavan and I are the same. Myself and Satchitananda are one. Another person, pritatvena. Bhagavan is another, whether my spouse or my child, my friend, my master. And that's how I develop a relationship with Bhagavan, this feeling. Remember I said chapter 9 is to feel all is divine. And then another is Bahuda Vishwato Mukham, where they feel all around them, the elements, the electronics, all is divine. So one's bhakti through bhava is Bhagavan and I are one, another person is I am one, Bhagavan is another is I am one, and all is Bhagavan. Lord Krishna gives another framework to understand this by. This is in shlokas 16 to 19. These are some of the most powerful shlokas in Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Surreal amount of content to contemplate on. So much so, there's no way I can even begin summarizing all of this content other than in shlokas 16, 17, 18, 19. The idea is to feel all is divine, from your mother to your grandparents, to the effects, to the cause, to the person who created karma, to the person who facilitated karma. And Bhagavan just does a 360-degree review and says, I am all of this. Feel me. Swami Tejamayana shares in this lesson two amazing narrations of a person named Sri Uriya. He was a saint in the last century. And I'll tell you both narrations related to him. Some of you have read the lesson. If you haven't, then it's even more new to you. Sri Uriya was invited by one of his shishyas to bhiksha, lunch at their home. And this shishya's wife was not well, so the shishya made food. And Sri Uriya had eaten all of a certain vegetable, a certain sabji. And then he left. And that shishya realized that, there was no more vegetable for him to eat, right? In bhiksha, whatever's remaining is the shishya's prasad. And then when he looked at the vessel more closely, he realized that there's a residue there that doesn't seem right. And he realized that he didn't use a certain oil to cook that vegetable. He put cod liver oil. It's the wrong oil that was used. And Sri Uriya ate all of that so the Shishya wouldn't have to eat all of that. See how the wise see that, feel that divinity in others. And then another narration related to this is Sri Uriya was blessed by Annapurna Devi. Annapurna Devi is the one who holds the cornucopia, the horn of plenty. And that wherever he went, that home would receive a lifetime supply of food. They would never have to be concerned about food. So he would incessantly travel from village to village to village, home to home to home, begging, asking for bhiksha. Not that he needed it, but he knew that wherever he went and he received bhiksha, that home would never have to worry about food ever again. Again, knowing and remembering and feeling divinity in those who are close to you, like your shishyas, and those who are unknown to you, society, humanity. This is our trajectory. Whether we do it now or we do it in the next lifetime, this is how we must live. Narayana.